Walk into a grocery store today and an egg can feel like it needs a resume. Cage-free, free-range, pasture-raised, organic, omega-3, brown shell, golden yolk. But before eggs had labels, grays, refrigerators, and cholesterol warnings, they had a story. And strangely enough, that story may begin with rice. A major archaeological investigation published in 2022 looked at chicken remains from more than 600 sites across 89 countries. The earliest securely identified domestic chickens appeared in what is now central Thailand, roughly 3,500 years ago. And researchers think expanding rice cultivation may have helped bring wild rice junglefowl, the ancestors of modern chickens, closer to humans. In other words, maybe the chickens didn't come to humans because we wanted eggs. Maybe the chicken came because it wanted our rice. And that is where our journey begins. Because today, I don't want to make another video simply asking whether eggs are healthy. I've already broken down cage-free, free-range, pasture-raised, organic, and omega-3 labels in my video entitled Stop Being Tricked by Egg Labels. Today, I want to do something different. I want to understand how this strange biological package traveled from the jungle to ancient civilizations, to religious traditions, to art, to medicine, to the cholesterol wars, and finally into your refrigerator. Because once you know the story of the egg, breakfast looks a little different. Interestingly, when chickens eventually reach parts of Europe, archaeological evidence suggests people may not initially have treated them primarily as food. Some early chickens appear to have been buried intact rather than butchered. Imagine seeing one for the first time. Colorful feathers, strange noises, and a built-in alarm clock nobody asked for. These birds may have been exotic, symbolic, or special before Europeans routinely put them on the menu. But by Roman times, eggs were very much food. In fact, the Latin expression ab ovo usque ad mala essentially meant from the egg to the apple, from the beginning of the meal to the end. Eggs commonly appeared at the beginning. That's where ab ovo, from the egg, came to mean starting from the very beginning. And archaeology has given us an extraordinary connection to those ancient eggs. At a Roman site in Britain, archaeologists uncovered eggs preserved in a waterlogged pit. Several broke during excavation. And apparently, 1,700-year-old rotten egg still smells exactly as terrible as you would expect. But one survived intact. Later scans suggested there was still liquid inside. Think about that. A fragile chicken egg survived approximately 1,700 years. Most of us can't get a dozen eggs from Costco without cracking one. But humans weren't merely eating eggs. We were learning how to control their biology. Ancient Egyptians developed large-scale artificial incubation systems using mud brick structures. Long before electricity or digital thermostats, skilled workers managed to heat carefully enough to hatch enormous numbers of chicks without hens sitting on the eggs. In other words, humans were building chicken incubators before anybody could order one from Amazon. And there was good reason to become ingenious with eggs. Hens don't produce exactly the same number year-round. And before refrigeration, a fresh egg was a perishable treasure. Different cultures developed salting, pickling, coating, and other preservation techniques. China developed preserved eggs, including what English speakers call the century egg. Despite the name, you do not need to put one in your will. They're preserved for far less than a century. In the West, one later technique involves sodium silicate, water glass, to help preserve eggs for longer periods. Long before refrigerators, humans had already decided eggs were valuable enough to engineer ways to keep them. But eggs became more than food. They became symbols. We often hear that Easter eggs are simply an ancient fertility symbol. But the real history is more interesting. In medieval Christian practice, eggs were among foods restricted during Lent. Then Easter arrived. The fast ended, and eggs could return to the table. So the Easter egg wasn't only symbolic of new life. After weeks without eggs, it also meant something much more practical. Breakfast was back. Over time, eggs became decorated, exchanged, hidden, and eventually transformed into elaborate luxury objects. The journey from chicken to Fabergé is one of humanity's more impressive examples of refusing to leave a perfectly good object alone. And here's where the egg story gets really strange. We didn't just eat eggs, we painted them. For centuries, artists mixed pigments with egg yolk to create egg tempera. Some remarkable works of art survived partly because egg helped bind the pigment to the surface. Then, in the 19th century, egg whites helped us make photographs. The albumin print used albumin egg white to coat photographic paper and create a smooth surface for light-sensitive chemicals. So eggs didn't merely feed the people who created history. Eggs actually helped preserve what history looked like. And then eggs entered medicine. In the 1930s, scientists learned to grow influenza virus inside embryonated chicken eggs. That eventually helped researchers develop influenza vaccines. And amazingly, egg-based manufacturing is still used for some flu vaccines today. Think about the journey we've taken. Something humans once collected from nests eventually became a tiny biological factory used to help protect humans from infectious disease. And we still haven't talked about how remarkable the egg itself is. An eggshell looks solid. It isn't. It contains thousands of microscopic pores. Over those pores sits a tiny protective layer called the cuticle or bloom, which helps limit microbial penetration. Beneath the shell are membranes. The white or albumin is mostly water and protein, including proteins involved in antimicrobial defense. Those twisted white cores that sometimes make people nervous are called chalaza. They're basically the yolk seatbelts, helping keep it suspended. They are not worms. They are not baby chickens. Please don't call your doctor. And that little air pocket at the wide end of the egg, it forms as freshly laid egg cools and its contents contract. As the egg ages, water and gases escape through the shell. The air cell gets larger, and the egg becomes more buoyant. That's why old eggs can float. But floating means older. It does not mean salmonella. And sinking does not certify an egg as bacterial-free. The float test is a freshness test, not a microbiology lab. Humans even learned to inspect the inside without breaking the shell. Historically, eggs were held up to a bright light, a candle, to examine the contents. Hence the word candling. Today's sophisticated equipment does the job, but the principle survives in modern egg grading. And then industrialization changed everything. Egg production became larger and more standardized. Grading systems developed. Housing systems changed. Supply chains expanded. In the United States, washing and refrigeration eventually became central parts of commercial egg safety. And this created one of today's strangest travel experiences. An American walks into a European grocery store, sees eggs sitting unrefrigerated, and thinks, should I call somebody? The European walks into an American store, sees eggs in a refrigerator, and probably wonders what happened to us. The answer is that the two systems evolved differently. The United States commercially washes eggs under controlled conditions and then relies on refrigeration as another barrier against salmonella growth. European Class A eggs are generally not washed and generally aren't artificially chilled during marketing, while European systems put substantial emphasis on controls upstream, including flock surveillance and vaccination policies. So this isn't smart Europe versus dumb America. They're different food safety systems, managing the same biological problem. And yes, salmonella can exist when an egg looks perfectly clean. Now let's talk about why eggs remain so popular today, especially in the low-carb, keto, and carnivore communities. There's a very practical reason. Eggs are naturally very low in carbohydrate. They provide complete protein and fat in one complete food. They're relatively inexpensive compared to many other animal proteins. And for many people, they're remarkably satiating. So rather somebody is trying to control blood sugar, simplify meals, increase protein, or simply avoid the ultra-processed breakfast aisle, eggs fit unusually well. That doesn't make them magical. It just makes them incredibly practical. But then, after thousands of years of humans eating eggs, something remarkable happened. We put the egg on trial. By the 20th century, scientists started becoming concerned that elevated blood cholesterol was associated with cardiovascular disease, and eggs contain a lot of dietary cholesterol. One large egg contains roughly 186 milligrams, almost all in the yolk. In 1968, the American Heart Association recommended limiting dietary cholesterol and advised no more than 3 whole eggs per week. Think about that historical turn. For millennia, the egg was food. Now it had become a weekly allowance. And eggs became tiny cholesterol grenades in the public imagination. But science kept moving. Today we understand that dietary cholesterol and blood cholesterol are not the same thing. Controlled trials suggest eggs can modestly raise LDL cholesterol on average. So saying dietary cholesterol has absolutely no effect would be wrong. But the response varies substantially between individuals. And saturated fat, genetics, insulin resistance, baseline lipids, and the overall diet all matter. A 2025 randomized crossover study designed to separate egg-derived cholesterol from saturated fat found that LDL cholesterol tracks saturated fat more strongly. So the modern question shouldn't be, are eggs good or bad? It should be, what happens in the context of this person? If someone dramatically increases egg consumption, I care about their overall metabolic health, their triglycerides, their LDL particles, and especially their ApoB, which are the number of circulating atherogenic particles. If your LDL particles are larger or your ApoB is in a good range, your total cholesterol becomes less concerning in my mind. So this is what I tell my patients. Let's measure, observe, personalize. That's more useful than joining Team Egg or Team No Egg on social media. And cooking gives us another surprise. People sometimes assume raw eggs must be nutritionally superior because heat destroys nutrients. But in a fascinating, although very small human experiment, researchers measured digestion of isotope-labeled egg protein. Cooked egg protein was about 91% digestible. Raw egg protein, about 51%. Only 5 patients were studied. So please don't tattoo 91 and 51 on your arm. But the difference was dramatic. Raw egg whites also contain avidin, which binds biotin, and raw eggs carry greater food safety concerns. Rocky Balboa gave us many gifts. Nutritional biochemistry may not have been one of them. So now, after 35,000 years of domestication, Roman feast, Egyptian incubators, medieval fasting, Renaissance paintings, 19th century photographs, vaccine laboratories, industrial farming, and cholesterol wars, we finally arrive at aisle 7. And there they are, $3 eggs next to $9 eggs. Cage-free, free-range, pasture-raised, organic, omega-3, brown, golden yolk. I've done an entire video decoding these labels, so I won't make you take that class twice. But here's the short version. Cage-free does not necessarily mean outdoors. Free-range means outdoor access, but not necessarily the pastoral paradise pictured on the carton. Organic describes a regulated production system. It does not guarantee dramatically better nutrition. Brown shells are not healthier than white shells. A deep orange yolk reflects pigments in the hen's diet, but it's not a complete nutritional report card. And if you specifically want more omega-3s, buy eggs with a verified omega-3 claim, rather than trying to diagnose the fatty acid profile by yolk color. So what does paying more actually buy? Sometimes better animal welfare standards, sometimes different farming practices, sometimes specific feed, sometimes more omega-3, sometimes certification, and sometimes marketing. Those are all different things. If my goal is nutrition per dollar, a fresh, intact, properly refrigerated basic egg remains an extraordinary nutrient-dense food. If animal welfare matters to me, I may willingly pay more for a credible, pasture-raised or strong third-party welfare certification. If organic agricultural practices matter to me, buying organic supports that priority. The important thing is knowing what you're purchasing. Because after researching this story, I don't think the most amazing thing about eggs is their protein, or their choline, or even their versatility. It's that something so ordinary has quietly traveled alongside human civilization for thousands of years. We domesticated the bird, learned to incubate its eggs without the mother, invented ways to preserve them without refrigerators, turned them into religious symbols, painted masterpieces with them, printed photographs with them, used them to manufacture vaccines, feared them because of cholesterol, and then created an entire grocery aisle of terminology, trying to convince you that one egg is completely different from another, all while the egg itself has been sitting there doing something remarkably simple, protecting what's inside. Maybe that's why understanding our food matters, because food becomes more interesting when it stops being just protein, carbohydrate, and fat. It has biology, it has history, it has culture, it has mistakes, discoveries, controversies, and stories. And once you know those stories, maybe the next egg you crack feels a little less ordinary, because sometimes appreciating food begins with understanding where it came from. And that's what happens when we put food under the microscope. I'll see you in the next video.